Welcome, beautiful souls, to the Perfectly Imperfect Spiritual Podcast. I'm your host, Marta the Medium, and I am so grateful to have you here with me for our 51st episode. Today, I'm joined by a luminous guest, Shaka Xolani. Shaka is a yoga teacher, psychic, and Reiki Master, originally from London and now currently based in Costa Rica. She's writing her very first book, which explores the powerful intersections of yoga, politics, and social change. Shaka works with groups teaching yoga, psychic development, and courses for empaths and highly sensitive people, as well as offering one to one readings, energy, and somatic work. Shaka, welcome to the podcast. I am so honored to share this space with you today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Let's create some magic.
Absolutely. Let's create some magic. um,
So, how could we start? Well, I love to begin with your journey, and there are never beginnings, but like if we could maybe, if you're willing to share how your path unfolded from London to Costa Rica and how that transition has shaped the way you hold space
mm,
as both a teacher and healer.
that's a beautiful question. Thank you. That's a really beautiful question. So I think I always knew that London wasn't like my place that I would stay. I'm highly sensitive. So like that city life, that hustle and bustle and like, you know what I mean? It's like a real, yeah, I found London life challenging, if I'm honest. I kind of pinpoint that to my ancestry, but that's another story for another day. But I think, like both my parents, my ancestry come from like small towns, so I just don't think I was built for the big city, but that was where I was born. So I think I had this sense that one day I would live somewhere else. And then I don't know if you know about Brexit because you're in Scotland,
I'm in
right?
Scotland, yes.
All right. I mean, even the politics of Scotland. So like, all the politics. So I think like after Brexit, it was like a real wake up call. I was like, man, we got to get out of here. Like, this is not the place to be. Like, it's just getting more and more like the energy of the UK for me just felt like it was getting more and more contracted and like, rather than more open and hopeful and lighter and healed. It's like that was where I felt like the trajectory of the energy was going for myself anyway. And then I basically got a Jamaican passport. My dad's Jamaican. So I basically that was what motivated me to get my Jamaican citizenship. And then I wanted to go to Jamaica. I planned to go to Jamaica. And then again, there's another backstory to that. But basically I got redirected and went to Costa Rica. And it was just for a holiday. I was just going for a month, just to, unwind, see a new place. And I just landed and it was immediate. It was just immediate. My heart opened. I had the most incredible time. And it felt like home. It felt like home. It felt like what I've been looking for like all my life. And so I spent a month in Costa Rica, came back to London, basically sold everything I owned, packed up my life, came back 3 months later and basically have been here ever since. So yeah, that was my journey. Yeah. And still love it. Like I love it here. It's funny. I was just like coming back, I was teaching this morning and I was coming back. And I was thinking, there's just something, it suits my energy. Like I'm a sensitive, I'm highly sensitive and it just here is a very heart-centered, natural, there's a lot of nature, obviously. And I feel like it really supports me and my own healing. And I think through that has allowed me to become a better healer myself or a better practitioner or a better space holder and teacher for that. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. So that's my little journey.
I love it.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about the pace of life in Costa Rica and about Pura Vida and anything that, what does it mean to you? Like, I want you to give your own spin to this.
So in Costa Rica, the whole like the kind of it's something everyone says here is pura vida in Espanol or Spanish. It means pure life. So it's pure living. It could be like pure living, pure life. And, you know, and I think that's definitely what the land here represents. It's a very alive, it's very, obviously Costa Rica is known for its like ecotourism and like like being like off grid, like, you know, like using sustainable, like, oh God, my mind has gone blank. But yeah, like basically like sustainable uses for like electricity and things like that. And so, yeah, it's just a place where I feel like the connection to nature and the like love of nature is still here. And so for me, like Pura Vida is like very high vibrational place. First of all, I think as soon as you come, you feel that. So you kind of feel the lightness of the energy. And then I think there's something about, yeah, like this way of life. I mean, I definitely feel like different places in Costa Rica are very different, like anywhere in the world. There's kind of each place has its own personality, its own kind of rhythm, and its own kind of culture, I suppose. And where I am is based in the Caribbean, so it's got a big Caribbean culture here. So I think that's also why it felt like home for me, because there's a big Jamaican culture here. So yeah, like a lot of Jamaicans came here at the beginning of the 20th century to help build the railroads. Some went back and some stayed. So it's a very interesting history here in this particular part of Costa Rica. So it's kind of like Jamaica, but it's kind of not. It's kind of like Costa Rica. And so yeah, like where I am, it's like a pace of life. It's like a small, sleepy fisherman's town, really. I mean, it's growing, it's changing, it's expanding. It's definitely not so much the simple life is still here, but it is changing as it expands, which, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I think at the moment it's still enough. Like there's enough. I realize like there's things here, like you see the same people, for example, you know, you go out, you see the same people and everyone waves and everyone says hello. And I'm sure you find this in Scotland as well. Like, I mean, anywhere outside of London, to be honest, like people in the eye and you say hello, right? You just go, hi, you know, it's just polite. You just acknowledge people. And it's like, there is still that essence of like, you know, we are here and we are connected. Like, I am not just in my own world and you're in your world and I'm not paying any, like, it's literally, there is still this sense of connection. And I don't know what that is to do with, like, if that's the culture, if that's the nature. But yeah, I mean, you can still step out your door and, you know, you're greeted by birds, by lizards, by monkeys, by sloths, you know, insects, like colorful insects, frogs, like it's just teeming with life. And so, yeah, it's just a very life-filled place. There's a lot of life here. It feels very energizing, how I feel here. Yeah. So I think Pura Vida for me is like pure living, like simple life. I think like for me, it's like a simple life, like good food, like connection, friendships, pace of life, still have time to spend doing the things that I love, or like, you know what I mean? Like enjoying simple things, I guess, is what I would say, which is very different to London, which is very fast paced, very complex. It's very layered. It's very busy. There's a lot to do. You've got to constantly be doing. Whereas here, I feel like there is more space to be. Yeah. And I definitely
love it.
Yeah. So much. Yeah.
And especially when you've been talking, well, I've got so many thoughts, but when you've been talking about the simple life and the simple, well, way of living and appreciating those things that maybe people, I'm generalizing, in busy cities would not concentrate on. But like for me, it's everything. And it's just the essence of our, well, I keep hearing human self, but like it's so beautiful because we talk often that we are part of nature or that we are connected with Mother Earth, but like you get to live in this place where you are really, really physically as well, like so much connected, and you can really
Yeah.
experience, I'm sure, the beauty, but also the energy of Mother Earth and of the
Absolutely. And she rules here, you know. I think here, like Mother Nature still rules the roost, you know, like here, you know, things happen or they don't happen depending on the weather, you know what I mean? Like you can do things or you can't do things. And so it's still very much dictated by the rhythms, by her, like, you know, what the water's doing. Can we go fishing? Is it too rough? We can go, like all these kinds of things. Whereas I think in the city, you can kind of like insulate yourself and kind of, nothing really stops for nature, really. Like the show must go on. Like it must go on. Like, it's just that mindset. And I just find here it's, there's a little bit more honoring of, like her nature and in so our own, so I feel very lucky, very blessed to experience something like this, because it's not what I'm used to, what I mean? Is it like it's in my blood, it's in my bones somewhere, from some past, maybe a past life or my ancestors, but it's like I'm London born and bred, never experienced, never known anything else other than London. So for me it's massive shift, but it feels like like a real homecoming, I want to say. So
I love it.
Land every day. Yeah.
And I'm curious, what has Mother Earth taught you about yourself and about your business? Because what you've been describing, that sometimes you have to listen to her. And I know if we juxtapose it with us being in our I'll call it divine masculine energy and meeting our targets and doing, and here it's Mother Earth, like, no, you're not going to do it. Like, you have to maybe rest, relax, or postpone things, or just be. I'm just curious about that
Absolutely.
clash. And then, like, what happened when you perhaps surrendered?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question and very insightful, because, I mean, here there is talked about like the initiations. Like, I think, like it can be rough. I mean, she could be rough because she, I feel like the invitation, or at least for me in my experience, the invitation for me has always been, where can I open my heart even more? Where can I like be more so deeply in place of connection and surrender? And so as you open, as right, she's going to find all those bits where there's closeness, where there's blocks, right? And so, it can be incredibly confronting, painful even, I want to say. But I've never felt anything other than trust in that process and what I was experiencing and what has always been on the other side of that for me. So I feel like for me, it's just been about heart opening. Like I sometimes describe like the difference between this kind of way of life and like maybe city life is that like in the city, you're like so much more insulated, like, in many ways from nature. Like, so you've kind of got so many more structures and insurance and like things that kind of protect you in these different kinds of ways. But the heart is closed. Like, the heart is hard. Whereas here is the opposite. You're kind of open to the elements, like, your stuff gets moldy, what I mean? Electrics don't really last that long here. And like, what I mean? Like sometimes, you can't go out because it's rain or whatever, like, it's and can be dangerous. Like even trees, they fall on houses and like all sorts of things happen. It can be very dangerous because Mother Nature can also be like wild and ferocious. But in that, what you have is just big heart because there's so much connection, because there's so much appreciation for life. So I sometimes feel like that is, or at least that's been my observation and my experience. It's just been heart opening. It's been the place where I've really, like had the biggest heart openings and experience. Like expansion like I've never experienced in my life. So it's incredible.
I have a couple of thoughts. I always have thoughts, and I'm like, I want to go here and there. But I'm just curious. Did you run your business when you were in London, and then listen even to the words that I'm using? Because I feel like there is such a huge contrast between running a business, like in London, and it feels to me like if you whatever work you did in London. But I'm curious, did you run your business, and whether you change a perception of running a business into being your business, and like just like being, and like from just running and doing, and just using.
I would say I think it's interesting you should ask that, because I was thinking about this and I was like, in my house, my old flat where I used to live in London, like I used to have what I called an indoor garden, right? So I didn't actually have a garden because I lived in a flat, but like literally I had I mean, I must have had about 100, like so many plants. It was actually ridiculous. You came in and it was like being in a rainforest. There was plants everywhere you look. And so I realized that my business is called Skies and Flora, obviously. So I used to take pictures of photography as well. So I've always had this like just reverence for nature. And so it kind of makes sense to me. I'm like, oh, of course, I would end up here. Like it kind of feels like that. And then, and so, yeah, you're like, I did what I did in London. So I was a yoga teacher. I was working as a Reiki Master. I was reading cards, like doing psychic readings. So I was doing all of that in London, essentially. And I came here on a wing and a prayer. I didn't know. I just didn't know. I had a plan, but not really a plan. And I was like, okay, well, I'm hoping we'll sort of see if I can, if this is, you know, and I've been very lucky. I feel very lucky. Again, I always just say I feel lucky that I was able to come here, teach here. So I'm teaching yoga here. And through that, I've been able to continue offering what I do, which is, like readings and Reiki healings and things like that. And do I think I don't consider myself a business owner? I mean, I maybe, yeah, I don't really consider myself a business. Like, you know, I run it, like I've been self-employed for nearly 20 years. So I've always been like, you know, doing my own thing basically. And, but I've never seen myself as business. So maybe it's because I'm anti-capitalist as well. So this doesn't help. I'm like in this struggle with myself was like, I need to, like, you know, obviously earn a living and you know, bring my talents into the world and bring my service and my talents into the world. But I'm not motivated by money. That's just never.
Even the terminology doesn't help. Like, this is what I'm like being like, run a business. Why do I have to run a business? Why can't I just be my, why can I like.
Yeah. For sure. It's exactly that. Because it is like, you've got to do. And then I'm like, but I think the work that we do, and I think Marta, you'll relate, is that, you know, so much of what we do is about caring and healing and love. I believe sometimes I say like what I do for a living is I get to love on people. I get to allow them to experience what it feels like to be held in that energy. And I feel like there's not really, how do you package that? You know what I mean? How do you really package that in a really congruent way? You know, like for me, I would rather keep the integrity of the work, which is that, yeah, that's what it's for. I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe in fair exchange of energy, and you know what I mean? Like I've got to eat, I've got to, you know, provide myself with a roof over my head. So, you know, I'm not a healer that's like, oh yeah, just do it for free. No, like there is exchange and energy. It's important, but it's not my motivation. And I just trust that that's how I'm supposed to work. And, you know, so far I've been blessed enough to, you know, I still eat.
I love it. And it's so important to mention because so many light workers struggle to talk about money, or even people who use our services. Of course, they would try and say, oh, you shouldn't be charging for it. And I had that realization again with the terminology some days ago and some years ago. It keeps coming back. I'm like, I don't do it for money, but I do earn money from that, and I make a living from that. So yes, I do pay, but my motivation, I don't do it for money. Money flows. This is that energy. But do I feel I should be recompensated well for what I do? Yes, because money's energy, and then we add that energy, whether it's bad or good, and there's no limit. So if we put limits, then I feel that's going to block as well. And I've discovered that actually the more money I have, it gives me freedom. But of course, I'm aware that we don't want just the money. There are like feelings and emotions behind that.
Absolutely. And I think that's what happens in the kind of current paradigm that we're in relationships with money, is that like you can end up just chasing that, and then you lose sight of why you're chasing that. Because like you said, most of the people, like if you ask them, what do you want money for? It's like, I want freedom. I want to be able to do these things and these things. And actually like, but actually once you do those things, is that enough? Like, you know what I mean? Or do you want the money? Like, and sometimes, and actually I feel like, yeah, like for me, I guess experience and being has always been more valuable for me than, like, that has been my value. So, I've always had enough, give thanks, to the creator. I've always been provided for, always been incredibly blessed. Never had to ask or want for anything. But I live a simple life, I'm not, and I guess it depends what you want. It depends what you're motivated by, for me, it's that pura vida, that pure living, like just to live in harmony with the nature, with other people, with my work, with my service. Like it's very simple, and that's enough for me, that's enough for me.
I love it. Could you
Yeah.
talk about how do you open your clients' hearts?
Mm.
How, if you can talk, because I know you weave together, well, yoga, and then you do psychic development and healing for empaths and highly sensitive souls. So I'm curious how you really
Mm.
hold space and you allow people to open their hearts. And then maybe you can talk a little bit how, like, what first drew you to this multi-dimensional path and combining all of those
Yeah.
modalities. I will.
It's a great question. It's great. You've got great questions, Marta. I love it. Thank you. How do I open my clients' hearts? I mean, I would say like, I don't think it's conscious. Like I won't sit here right, how can I get this person to open their heart? Like I don't think or work like that. But I think that's something about being rooted in my own heart and holding that as an energy. And then that gives permission to people, if they want to, drop into that. And then I think like with the client work, like psychic readings and things like that, I feel like when you're able to tap into somebody's energy and recall things that really you shouldn't know, but somehow speak to some deeper part of them, and they know that that's true. Somehow what you're doing is opening up a field where they're able to know that, oh, there is more to life than what I see. And when you know that, then you plug into the magic. And then I think that's kind of, I sometimes feel like I'm just opening that door for people. It's just opening that door, reminding them magic exists, magic exists, magic exists, magic exists. It's like, I just feel like you're just opening the door to that and allowing them to find that connection themselves. And like learning to trust that, and know that we are never alone, that the spirit are with us all the time, and guiding our lives. Yeah. And, and I think there is like higher paths for us. There are higher paths for us to take. There are, ways in which our soul is asking us to show up in this life. And I'd like to think that that's all I'm helping, is to maybe highlight or, shine light on that in some way.
Can we talk about yoga? Because I know it plays an integral, a very important part in your life.
Yeah.
And I would love for the viewers or listeners to take so much out of the whole conversation, but I guess I get so many of my triggers when I speak about yoga or various practices, because yoga is often presented in the West through a very narrow lens and sometimes reduced to fitness, aesthetics, or even performance on social media. And yet
Yes.
traditionally it's a path, whether of liberation, philosophy, and union. I'm curious, what is it for you? And if you can speak to that, we need that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I've been practicing yoga for, wow, like 18 years. So almost 20 years. I'm not going to lie. I came to yoga and it was like, someone just said, hey, you should do that for your stress. That's really good for stress. And like, I was into fitness. I was running, I was doing dance. I was like doing kickboxing. I was like really fit, swimming, and like yoga was just like one more thing, just one more thing, just pack in and do, like, and I did it religiously for about a year. I was very disciplined. So I am quite disciplined. So I did it for like about a year. And then after a year, my life changed. Like literally my life changed. That's when I became vegan. That was when I just suddenly shifted, like something shifted in me. And then I think that was when I was like, oh, hold on a minute. What is this thing? And then that is when I sort of dug deeper and I got into the philosophy. I like studied the history. I've got a master's in yoga, traditions of yoga and meditation. So I teach yoga philosophy and yoga history on teacher training. So I teach teachers as well. I train teachers. And I completely agree. I think the medium of social media is not useful for transmitting the practice of yoga. Inevitably, I think that just the medium of social media requires what would you say? Like, it's got to be new. It's got to be fresh. It's got to be like, lights, camera, action. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to engage people and it's got to be fast. You've got to be quick, 5 seconds, bam, next. Like, it's just literally like that. Whereas that is not a practice of yoga. Yoga is a slow practice, and not necessarily the physical asana, I mean, like what you do on your mat, but the process of transformation takes place over a long time, over practice. That is the only way you can experience it. What is it? You're right. Like, it's anchored in this idea of liberation, that we have this veil of our ego that tells us what the world is, and yoga is piercing through that. It's helping us break that and get behind that veil and really start to experience, maybe connect to truth. But that's a long, I say, it could be lifetimes, that, this lifetime, maybe next lifetime, maybe next, I don't know when liberation will come, but it's not, but I know that it comes through practice. And, Patanjali Yoga Sutras talks about these two aspects of our practice that allow us to experience union, yoga, samadhi, however you want to say it. I mean, there's different conceptions of what liberation is, but there's two things we must do, which one is abhyasa, which is practice. That is devotion. That means we show up, we do our practice, we do what must be done. And then we have vairagya, which is surrender, detachment, let go. So we let go of the results. So, that's very opposite to this world. We have a goal, and then I do that thing to get that goal. But actually the practice is, no, I do the devotional practice for the sake of the devotional practice, and I surrender, and wherever it takes me is where it takes me. You know what I mean? And that is the truth, and that's where I should be. I don't anticipate what it's supposed to be. And I feel like my own practice is a constant humbling of that. Like, it's a constant sense of reminding me, I'm not in the driving seat here. Like, I am not in the driving seat here. And actually, it's a beautiful, oh my goodness, like, that's liberation. I don't have to know it all, be it all, and do it all, and have all the answers. I just need to devote myself to the practice, to something higher than myself. And allow the path to reveal itself through step by step by step by step. So that's been my experience. It's the foundation. My practice is the foundation of everything that I do. It is the thing that I always come back to. It's my daily practice. It's taught me discipline. It's taught me devotion. It taught me about showing up even when you don't feel like it. And yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not just a physical practice. It's not just asana, even though I do practice Ashtanga for my sins. I practice Ashtanga, which is incredibly physically dynamic practice, but I need that. I feel like my body needs that. I believe whatever gets you there, but it's very much an energetic and spiritual practice. So it's physical and it's spiritual. And in many ways, I think yoga is ahead of its time, in the sense that, like, now what we're learning about trauma and the way that the body is influenced by trauma. And I feel like yoga knew that from, like, with the breath, like the nervous system, the balancing of the nervous system, and this kind of way in which things show up in our bodies, and yoga will bring that up to the surface. And it also understands that our bodies are spiritual. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I feel like, I say that, and then there's another paradigm of yoga, which is asceticism, which is a denial of the body, kind of harsh, kind of disciplining of the body in order to attain, higher level consciousness. But actually, I feel like, at least for me in my own practice, like, my practice has allowed me to root into my body. and find, maybe I'm more tantric, I suppose. Like I think and most women are. Most women will eventually, if you're like feminine led, you're definitely eventually you're going to come to tantra, and realize that spirituality is embodied. It's not kind of in a distant kind of cut off place away from the earth. It's right here, right now, in our bodies.
I love it. How you describe yoga as a spiritual, practice. I don't like to call it a spiritual discipline, but it reminded me, and I'm sure maybe you'll relate that it's the same with your psychic development or connection to the spirit world, because for me, it's exactly the same. It is about practice. So connecting with the spirit world, but then like surrendering, and then it's such a humbling experience because you are not in the driver's seat. Sometimes you think, but then the spirit world tells you like, no, you have to allow us to get you to a certain place. You have to remove yourself so we can assist you, and you're not to know everything. I don't know, I just had such a
Yes. Yes,
association.
Marta, it's true. And it's so it's so lovely to hear that from you, because that's true. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And sometimes we have to remind that, even like when we are tapping into the psychic realm, like people think you're fortune telling. You're like, oh, I'm going to tell you your whole life. And it's like, oh, no. It's like, and I've always experienced it for myself personally. My own intuitive guidance has always been next steps. It's never been the whole arc. And I always say, I think, well, thank goodness. Like, I don't want to have the pressure of my whole life that's in front of me. All I need to think about is what's right in front of me. What do I need to do right now? And suddenly that's the pressure's off. You don't have to understand and know it all and be it all and think it all. And you know what I mean? And obviously as well, that is the surrender of the ego, or this idea that you know what's better for you down the line. It's like, well, no, like I how could I possibly know? And actually, I think that's when you say you're giving space for spirit to come into your life, and bring you the blessings that you never even knew were possible, that you never even, you know what I mean? That like actually it's even better from my experience. I'm like, well, let you know, where they say Jesus take the wheel, or spirit, you know what I mean? Surrender in every spiritual practice, this idea that actually, you know, allowing is what allows like bigger and truer, more heartfelt blessings to be received. And that's definitely been my experience. And that's definitely, I don't necessarily teach that. I don't necessarily impart that in my practice, but that's the energy that I hold. And like you said, I mean, every time you're working with a group or with a person, it's like, let's see, what does spirit want to come through? I don't know. You know, it's the opening and the allowing, and then that's and what happens unfolds is what unfolds. So yeah.
Beautiful. And do you remember, when did you consciously invite spirit to your world? Could you talk a little bit about that? Well, maybe a little bit about you developing your awareness, and you connecting with the spirit world. But when was that shift that you consciously decided, okay, yeah, I want you all in?
Yeah, I don't know if I ever made that choice. I don't
Tell
know
me more.
for me, I don't know if I ever did that, but maybe I do now. But like, yeah, like I was always intuitive, like always interested in this, you know, what do you say, esoteric knowledge. Like always like interested. And but I had my spiritual awakening, opening, crisis could even be called. Like I had that in like 2008, and that's kind of like, that was when like things opened up for me, and things opened up from there. And then I started going to healing circles, and then I had a friend who was also a medium. Shout out to Jade. I always shout out to her, because she was like she kind of got me on this path. Like, if I'm really honest, like she brought me on this path because she bought me my first deck of cards. She gave me my first deck of cards. So and then I started reading, and I just read for myself. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what these cards meant. I just was reading, and I just got into it. And it just grew and grew and grew. And I feel like, I do really feel like it chose me, because I don't think it's a path that I would have chosen. I wouldn't have said, oh, I'm going to do this with my life. know, like it was not in that was not my world. That was not my, and so, but it's the path that just kept opening for me. And then, so I always worked with cards. And then I had what I called a psychic event in 2018. So that was when, like, suddenly, I don't know what happened, but like suddenly I started hearing things, seeing things. Like, I think you'll know this, I think you'll relate. Maybe there's a moment where you suddenly was like bombarded, and like suddenly wherever you go, I'm seeing people, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like, brr, like I know their whole life, like where they come, like what's happened with them. I was like, what is going, like it was a really scary time, if I'm honest. Like it was a really, I thought I was going mad. I knew I wasn't going mad, but I felt like, and I couldn't talk to anyone. Because how do you tell? If you tell people, man, I know these things and I'm seeing things, and people are going to go, you know, to the doctor. And so I managed to just, and my life changed. That was the moment. Everything shifted from there. That was when Skies and Flora was born. That's when I started teaching yoga. That was when I started to work professionally as a tarot reader. And then I went to I went to psychic school. And then I was like, I need to go where people know about this stuff and who can help me and guide me, because I was like, I don't know where do you go to develop those gifts? So I would definitely say, shout out as well to anybody listening who's having that kind of experience and who's thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going mad. You're not going mad. And there are places and there are spaces where you can be held, where you can develop, where you can learn that you are not alone and you're not weird and you're not like, you know, mad, that actually these are gifts. But they must be honed. So I think even if we're born with natural gifts, I still think there's practice for us to do. And there are ways in which we must honor and hone and work safely, you know. So we're very big on, like, you know, spiritual energetic protection in the school, grounding. It's not all just astral travel, you know. Be grounded, you got to take care of your energy. So, you know, like very, very practical ways in which to manage these psychic openings. So yeah, and I'd be curious to know your thoughts on that as well. And your experience.
No, I completely agree. But what has popped into my mind as well, for anyone who's watching it or listening to it, like those places, well, first of all, always trust your intuition and don't rely, various things keep coming. Don't rely on recommendations entirely. Always trust your gut feeling and intuition, whether the person, like if I'm talking about the mentor or the course, is a match for you. So always trust it. The other thing that keeps coming to my mind is, don't assume that anyone who's spiritual or who is a psychic medium is going to work with integrity. Trust your gut, and if anyone makes you feel uncomfortable, run away. You can say no. This is what keeps coming, because I had to learn it hard way as well. But those spaces are so important, because we need spaces where we can talk about anything that we've experienced, so that we are not considered insane, but also that other people can validate our insanity, which I love, our craziness, because I really have a positive connotation with being crazy. I'm like, yes, I'm owning it. And it feels so much better when you understand that there are other people experiencing something similar. So definitely. But what you're saying, it's so important about grounding yourself and protecting, because there's so much fear instigated in people's minds, in those peoples who have never been exposed to the heart-led psychic mediums, I'll say. So of course you want to set an intention, and you want to know what energies you're channeling, and that's why it is crucial to learn how to protect your energy, how to be intentional, because it's the same with the people here. When, like, on this earthly plane, you're not going to be taking advice from anyone. Like, and it's the same with the connection with the spirit world. You're not going to be tapping to well, first of all, anything. You want to be aware, whom am I speaking with? But you can do it in a very safe way. So yeah. Well, I can keep going with downloads.
I think, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I think that, like, the school that because I work for the International School of Intuition and Healing, but I know that there are other psychic schools. I know, obviously, yourself, Marta, you teach courses and offer this kind of development. And I think it's really, really important, because I think it can be kind of seen as like woo woo and like, but it actually isn't. It's actually when you really start to move into the practice, it is woo woo, but it kind of isn't. There are like kind of practicals. It's like a bit of both. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, there are just certain ways in which we start to understand. It becomes normalized. I want to say like this normal way of integrating spiritual life into our everyday world. And I think it's more to do with the fact that this has been lost in the modern world. You know what I mean? This connection to source, to spirit, to nature, to animism, you know, this has been lost in this modern world. And all we're really doing is reconnecting back to that. We're going back to our roots. That's how I see it anyway. So in many ways, yes, it seems woo woo because it's like, oh my God, like we're all rational and scientific. But actually there's no contradiction between rationality and science and spirituality. There really isn't actually. It's very, it just seems so obvious to me. And yeah, so I think there are many you know, spaces, people, paths that are further ahead in their knowledge and understanding of how to integrate this worldly life with this spiritual life. And essentially that's what we're doing, is reconciling that, like reconciling our lives on earth and our infinite being, our you know, our infinite souls. And yeah, and there's I think there are practices that help us with that task. And yeah, I'd like to think part of my work is to offer that, you know, offer my knowledge, offer my service in service of that, of helping guide people.
Could you share some simple or maybe complicated tips? But I want to ask, could you give your own spin to the definition of who is an empath, who are highly sensitive souls, and how do you support empaths and highly sensitive souls? And maybe tips for anyone who's watching here. What is it that they can implement just right now?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, this is like maybe like my little wheelhouse. This is like my little wheelhouse. I think I'm not a fan of labels. So I just first caveat that. I know we live in a world of labels. Everyone wants a diagnosis for something or the other, like, you know, to explain why am I the way that I am. And so I'm not a fan of like labels, but I think empath was something that I came across and I was like, it hit me like boom. And I was like, oh my goodness, it described everything, like all of the things. So, you know, an empath is generally someone who's highly sensitive. So this means that like I also describe highly porous. So you're absorbing your environment, often without realizing, often unconsciously, when you're not aware. You're absorbing other people's energy. So this can leave you feeling drained, feeling tired. You might not want to socialize. You might want to spend a lot of time on your own. You might not want to be in crowds. You might find yourself in places or spaces or in environments and suddenly you're getting a real strong emotional reaction and there's not really any rhyme or reason for it. And you don't understand why that is. And then often what empaths do is if they don't understand this, they internalize that and can live like really lonely, isolated lives, right? And there is a way to thrive. And so I feel like my course for empaths is definitely a way to encourage empaths to know that it's a gift. You've got to know that you've got to know how to manage your energy. And when you do that, you can really, really thrive. And so I've got a whole course on that, like kind of really, like, and I'm working with shadow as well, because a lot is unconscious. I think like empaths have to do a lot of shadow work because of the internalization. So it's a real understanding of like what's yours, what's other people's, what's your own. You really have to get clear on that. I think everyone should do that work, but I think for empaths it's like imperative if you are going to survive in this world. And I think I'd like sometimes make a generalization, like not a generalization, but like maybe there's a difference between people who are born empathic and then people who become highly sensitive. Sometimes they say like through trauma or through like big experiences, that sometimes suddenly then you become like highly sensitive or highly aware. And I don't think there's any hierarchy or anything like that, but I just say that to say that there's different ways that people can come to it. The same way as psychic. I wasn't necessarily born a psychic. I feel like my psychic came like my field opened up as I became more spiritual. So yeah, I mean, I just think that particularly in this modern world, as a sensitive, you can really struggle. But I think that, I guess I'm really like into mythology as well. So I bring this into my course, that I really believe that empaths are here on this earth. I like kind of have this idea that empaths are here to play their part, to anchor in like particular energies into this earth, which is the energy of sensitivity, like coming back to that heart, like you say, heart-led way of living. And I think that's the gifts of empaths, often very caring, thoughtful, giving, generous, loving, which, and in this world, we consider that naive, worthless value. Does it make money though? Does it make money? How much money are you making? You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, there's no value in that. And that's not true. That is not true. And I really believe that strongly, that is incredible value in being able to bring heart-centered approaches into the world. My goodness, right now, we need this more than ever. Right now, we're in a massive crisis. And what's going to turn that around is people being more centered in their hearts and having the courage to live from that place. That is what's going to change things. And so, yeah, I mean, that is my like kind of like down the line, I'm kind of a radical, trying to change the world, right? But like in the here and now, like really, it's about allowing. I want to see people that are sensitive and heart-centered thrive. Yeah, that's that.
And what can someone who's watching it, who might identify themselves by what you've just described, what can they do now to either open their hearts or like support, I'll use the word support their empathy, support themselves?
I would say the first thing to do is fill your own cup. It's maybe one of the most important things you learn as an empath, because empaths are often giving at the expense of themselves. And that's where the shadow work is learning not to do that. That actually we can't bring our gifts into the world if we are constantly overwhelmed by carrying the load for others. And so there's usually some work to do around that. And then sometimes it's just asking yourself the question, what do I need? What do I want? Oftentimes empaths aren't even asking themselves that question because they're so concerned with taking care of others. And so I would say the first thing to do is figure out what you need, what you want, and then give it to yourself. And then give from that place. Give from a place where you first, like you've put on your own emergency mask before you start putting on others. Because I think that is the shadow element of like any healer, really, I think, actually. But particularly empaths, is that actually we are taking care of others when really we need to be taking care of ourselves. And then allowing that natural gift of care and love to come from a place where we are filled, and not in a kind of martyrdom, I suppose, because often this can just mask a kind of shadow thing that's going on, like where we're kind of solving other people's problems in a hope that it somehow will resolve something for ourselves. And I think we need to be mindful of that. But so I always say, empaths, first things first, figure out what you want, give it to yourself.
Beautiful. When you were describing the Mother Earth and her, I want to say personality and her wild nature, what has popped into my mind, I'm curious, what have you learned about yourself as a woman since you moved from London to Costa Rica? Because when you were describing that wild nature of Costa Rica, I started thinking, wild woman archetype. I'm just curious what has been stirred or what has opened for you, and whether you work with women. Because for me, being connected to nature has enabled me to tap into various aspects of myself as a woman. So I'm just curious about your own authentic journey and really owning your power as a woman, and then whether you work with women.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm definitely team woman for sure. I was thinking that this morning, actually. I was like, you know, but I don't consciously say I only work with women. But most of my clients, most of my students are women. I think every single 100% of all those that attend my empath course so far are women. And so to some extent, you know, and I sometimes wonder, I mean, I don't know if you feel this, but is there a correlation between being a woman and an empath? Are we just talking about being a woman? I don't know. Like, I don't know about that. That's a whole nother subject for another day. But like, yes, I think here, particularly in Costa Rica, we say the land is very feminine. I don't know why that is, but it's a very feminine land. It's very friendly for women. It's very much like, as a woman, like there's so many women here. I say it's like goddess central, like per there's got to be like, you know, it's like a real overflow of like goddess, beautiful, talented, strong, incredible women here. And so I just really feel like it's a land that supports the feminine nature. And I definitely feel like on some level coming here has allowed me to connect to that. And the work that I do, I'm incredibly passionate about women's liberation on some level. I mean, I would call myself a feminist. I'm not ashamed to call myself a feminist. But I don't know how that, I don't know, I'm still exploring ways in which that comes through authentically. And I think I guess when like, as you asked me this question, I keep thinking of this quote by Glennon Doyle, and it's from her book Untamed. And she says this thing about basically we need more women that are so full of themselves, that just do what needs to be done in this world and are not worried about, you know what I mean? Like basically just full of themselves, basically, you know? And I think there is something about that, like, men are kind of born full of themselves. You know what I mean? No one has to give them permission to be full. Like, you know, I sometimes think like sometimes men are like their own hype man. Like they can hype themselves up. They're no problem. Like, you know what I mean? And like, and we love that for them. I think there's, you know, there's a purpose for that. But women often at the opposite end of the spectrum, constantly filled with self-doubt. Am I allowed? Should I? And tiptoe around everyone, helping you know, making ourselves small to manage you know, and manage this big, massive male ego, essentially, that, you know, left untended to is, you know, what with the result of what we're seeing right now in the world. And I just feel like what actually is true, what we need is more women are full of themselves, who aren't questioning and doubting themselves. And I'm, you know, I've been on that journey myself. I've definitely had those moments where, you know, and I think definitely being here has allowed me to connect more to that. And I want to see more women who are heart-centered, heart-led, in their power and full of themselves, and bringing their knowledge and their magic and their love and their heart and their connection into the world. Like, you know, leave women to like our own devices. What do? We look after each other. We tend to each other. We look after the children. We care, you know. So when, and I say this about empaths as well, when you're heart-centered, you need to be around other heart-centered people. Because then you can relax, because you know that you can give and someone's going to give to you. And there's this kind of constant exchange, is kind of tending to one another, you know. And we need to create more spaces like that, where there is a kind of mutual tending to and a caring of one another. And I think women naturally have that, you know, and I'm generalizing obviously, but you know, it's not always only women and it's not always only men, and there's exceptions and not a caveat, but generally this is the truth. And I really feel like, yeah, if my work, I don't do it like necessarily consciously directed at women, but if my work can allow women to connect to that more, then I'm here for it. That's what I'm here to do, and make sure that it and it's authentic to each woman. Each woman is different. Each woman has her own expression, her own way of, you know, being. And it's more just allowing that natural expression to shine, and finding pathways and knowing that like there's nothing wrong with you. We're just living in the patriarchal world that just sees us as like secondhand, sort of here to make sandwiches, here to make things look pretty, and that's about it. You know what I mean? It's like a real and I think honoring nature, centralizing nature allows us to then like place the feminine woman in her place, which is, you know, and be respected and revered in her own right. And I'm not, I think people misunderstand, and I have to say this, even though I loathe saying it, but I think we have to say it, is that just because you're feminist or pro women, it doesn't mean you're anti men. And like, actually, I love I'm a, I want to live in a world where, where we can cohabitate, where, the needs of both are met. And right now we're living in a very unbalanced world where women's needs are not met, and spaces where women thrive, we need more of them.
This is so important. Thank you for acknowledging. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about the book you're writing? Anything that you would be willing to reveal now? I know it's still in the process of creation, so whatever you would like to leave the viewers and listeners here with.
I mean, I guess everything that we've spoken about. I mean, I feel like everything that we've covered, I think, really is what's touched on in my book. It's really about, I would say, maybe, in the end, actually, it's interesting, like, talking about like kind of going on a little bit of a journey and like, what I mean, taking little twists and turns. I think like, my book, I had this idea of what my book was going to be about. And I think as I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, it's kind of going in a different direction. And it's not so different, but I would say definitely, about coming back to the land. It's a kind of, I could maybe say it's one long love note to nature. It's not really, but it's kind of about, it's about this moment in our history, and like, we are aware that we are living in a time of paradigm change, right? And there are narratives around like the doomsday. It's, when you reconnect to nature, it's not doomsday. It's an opportunity for transformation. And I think when we realize that, we can play our part in navigating into, whatever comes next. And I think it's kind of a book really for sensitives, I guess. Like, how do sensitives play their part in this world? It's very harsh. It's very conflict driven. It's a lot of tribalism and conflict and arguments, and you gotta be right, and all of this. And how do you create change in those circumstances? And I think it's kind of speaking to that, like, how do we take our own power back? How do we become like our own vessel of change and just trust that that's enough? I'm not Neo from the Matrix. I don't have to go around and save everyone from themselves. That's not my job. My job is to save myself. And if I can touch the lives that I am able to touch, whether that be 1, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, whatever that is, but I touch who I'm supposed to touch and play my role and surrender the rest. And that's with the yogic philosophy, like, I'm not God. I don't know what the bigger plan is, and I just know that I just must play my part. And so the book is really about yoga, being a sensitive, and how to take your power back, really, and play your part in this moment of paradigm change, and not get caught up in the doomsday. Because when you get caught up in it's doomsday, it's all going wrong, who knows? How do you know? What if it's all what if this is an incredible, amazing opening, and actually it's opening up for a whole other amazing world? But we won't open up that world unless we potentially believe that it exists, unless we are in the energy of hope, unless we are in the energy of like, I can do something, like, and it could make a difference. So like, that's what I feel like we want to be igniting, awakening. And so my book really speaks to that. I haven't finished it yet, so it's kind of sort of something like that. No, I'm only joking. I mean, it's evolving. It's definitely evolving, and I feel like the more that I write, the more that I'm getting anchored in the message that I'm sharing. But then the world keeps changing, and then I'm like, oh, do I need to be talking about this? And I'm like, oh no, it's just that's gonna be book number 2. I was like, this is book number 1, and book number 2 will be about something else. So yeah.
I love it. And how can people work with you?
Yeah, so you can work with me obviously in person, online. You can go to my website and see all the things that I offer and I do. And so I teach obviously here, I teach like open classes, but I also do teacher trainings here as well. So, for those who do want to deepen, I mean, even for those who don't want to like become yoga teachers, but maybe want to deepen their knowledge and their knowledge of the practice. I have teacher trainings here running in Costa Rica, and then with a group, so not just by myself. Yeah, people can book and see me and get reading or a healing, Reiki,
Mm.
somatic work as well. I'm working in somatically as well at the moment. So that's a kind of another thing which kind of brings in all of the things really. It kind of brings in movement, visualization, awareness, like it's kind of shamanic even. I sometimes think somatics are like modern shamanism. So I'm kind of moving into that, something new. I studied last year, been working with a somatic therapist myself, and it's been incredible. Like there's been so many realizations, openings, and I'm sort of ready to kind of bring this into the world and offer that to others. So yeah.
Beautiful. I will not let you go and will not finish that episode. Well, I have to ask, do you have a deck of your cards here? And could you
Yes,
leave us with a message? Because,
absolutely.
I keep seeing, I must be psychic. I keep seeing a deck. I'm like, I have to ask. So, what would you like to leave the viewers and listeners with? What's the
Yeah.
message?
Let's see. Well, let's open it up. Let me just give it just 3 shuffles.
It's exciting. I love
Yes.
the sound.
Yes. And I guess I'll just ask, like, what's the message for all of us, for you and me, Marta, in this moment, and then for anyone listening or watching. Let me just split them. Yeah, just a message for us. And maybe a collective message. Yeah, for all of us, so just a collective message for this moment in time. Yeah, I'm going to ask Spirit, what have you got for us? Okay. Okay. Well, that's the nature of the cards. Beautiful. God, thank God. Then you're like, oh my goodness. Beautiful. Got the cups at the bottom. Well, so the first 2 cards that came out were like the 7 of Swords and the Devil, and I'm like, God damn. But then we got the Death and the Strength card. So we always like, well, that's, so I just have to say that's 3 majors out of 4. Yeah, 3 majors out of 4. So for those who don't know the cards, 7 of Swords and the Devil, like challenging cards. Yeah, these are cards that speak of, 7 of Swords is really like sometimes described as deceit, could be self-deceit. With the Devil, that just feels like when we do things in a kind of way that is heavy, that anchors us back into energies that aren't of the light. And maybe we tell ourselves that we are, we're telling ourselves a different story, whether that be addiction, whether that be, just living from your shadow, or doing things that are unhealthful for yourself or for other people. And I don't know, with that 7, it just feels like, when we kind of telling ourselves a different story, maybe we did like deluding ourselves and pretending, that it's like, it's okay, or it's fine, or you're justifying it, or that it's life-filled, or, and then, death and the strength, that feels like, well, that's very much over. This is the era of truth. And maybe even we want to say the era of the feminine. But yeah, like this is transforming, that actually this capacity to self-delude and pretend good is bad and bad is good and the world is upside down, that actually this is transforming. And that actually we have to get a hold of our shadow. Sometimes when the devil comes up in my read, sometimes I look up the strength card, because I sometimes feel like the strength card is the antidote to the devil. It's this kind of capacity to tame the wild voice forces within, right? And they become reciprocal. They're not, the lion protects her innocence, and she offers the lion tenderness and purity. And so it's a kind of reciprocal relationship. And I feel like, like I love that this strength card is at the end, and it's kind of like this spiritual strength, spiritual honesty, spiritual purity, doing the hard thing, doing the thing that's not easy, but it's right. This is kind of doing the thing that isn't right, but it's kind of, but you tell yourself that it's, whereas this is like, this is doing the hard thing, but it's the right thing. And where we live in integrity, in truth, where we tame these forces within and without, and that's a process. I think death there says that is a process. And I also love that, the light is coming up over the horizon. Yeah, after death has visited, the light is coming up. We're in, well, officially not in Leo season now. We're just coming out of Leo season, but the strength card represents Leo, which is the sun, right? And so I think there's something about that the sun is about illumination, truth, shine. We're seeing things, and I think there's something about that actually on the other side is actually there's more capacity for truthfulness. It's a heavy burden. Lying is a heavy burden. It's a weight on you when you're not able to be true, when you don't face yourself. You face your shadow, face your own darkness. Face your darkness, let it transform you so that you can experience true spiritual maturity and truth. I think that's it.
Well, Shaka, thank you so much first of all, for your heart, for your beautiful being, but also for sharing your wisdom, presence, and a vision with us all today. Thank you so much.
Oh, Marta, no, thank you. Thank you for having me. And just, thank you for being a great host. It's been really enjoyable. And just thank you to everyone who's listened. And thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. And this conversation, I know it has been such a gift, and I know it will resonate deeply with every soul listening and watching. And to all of you tuning in, thank you for being part of this sacred journey with us. And until next time, remember your imperfections are part of your magic, and your spirit is always guiding you home.
Amen.
Thank you, Shaka, and thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.